In September 2023, estate appraiser Jennifer Walsh received an assignment that would change her understanding of American history. The task seemed routine, cataloging the belongings of the recently deceased Hartwell family in Richmond, Virginia. The stately brick mansion, built in 1885, had been in the family for nearly 140 years, its rooms filled with generations of accumulated memories. Walsh specialized in appraising historical properties throughout the South, with particular expertise in post-Civil War era homes. The Hartwell estate presented typical challenges. Elderly Catherine Hartwell had passed away at 89, leaving detailed instructions that all family artifacts be carefully documented before the house was sold to developers. As Walsh methodically worked through the formal dining room, documenting silver sets and antique furniture, her attention was drawn to a large portrait hanging prominently above the mahogany sideboard. The photograph, dating from 1901, based on clothing styles and photographic techniques, showed what appeared to be a prosperous Southern family gathered in their parlor. The portrait depicted 7 people: a distinguished gentleman with a gray beard, his wife in an elegant dark dress with pearl buttons, their 4 children ranging in age from approximately 10 to 20, and an elderly woman seated to one side. All subjects displayed the formal poses and serious expressions typical of early 20th century family photography, when long exposure times required absolute stillness. The setting appeared to be the family's formal sitting room, decorated in the ornate style popular among wealthy Southern families at the turn of the century. Heavy draperies framed tall windows, while elaborate wallpaper and carefully arranged furniture reflected the prosperity that many Virginia families had rebuilt in the decades following Reconstruction. Nothing about the portrait initially seemed unusual. The Hartwell family had apparently commissioned a professional photographer to document their household in the formal style expected of prominent Richmond society families. The subjects wore their finest clothing and maintained the dignified composure appropriate for such an important family record. However, as Walsh prepared to move to the next item in her inventory, something in the background of the photograph caught her attention, a detail on the wall that would soon reveal a hidden chapter of American history. When Walsh examined the portrait more closely, using the magnifying equipment she carried for appraising fine art, she discovered something extraordinary hidden in plain sight. On the wall behind the Hartwell family, partially obscured by their formal arrangement, hung what appeared to be a small framed map or diagram. At first glance, the framed item seemed unremarkable. Many wealthy families of the period displayed maps, family trees, or decorative prints in their formal rooms. However, this particular item contained details that were both specific and puzzling. The frame appeared to contain what looked like a hand-drawn map showing rivers, roads, and small symbols marking specific locations. Most intriguingly, the map seemed to show routes and destinations that extended far beyond Virginia, with lines and markings that suggested a network of connected locations stretching northward. Small symbols appeared at regular intervals along the marked routes, symbols that looked like houses, churches, and other buildings carefully positioned at strategic points. Walsh photographed the portrait from multiple angles, using high-resolution equipment to capture every visible detail. When she enlarged the images on her laptop, the mysterious map became even more intriguing. The routes appeared to follow natural geographic features, river valleys, mountain passes, and established roads, while the symbols seemed to indicate safe stops or meeting points along predetermined paths. The geographic scope of the map was remarkable, showing detailed knowledge of terrain and transportation routes across multiple states. The level of planning and coordination implied by such a document suggested involvement in activities requiring careful organization and absolute secrecy. As Walsh studied the enlarged images, she began to recognize some of the geographic features shown on the mysterious map. The rivers and roads corresponded to actual locations throughout Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and states further north. This was not a decorative or fictional map, but rather a practical document designed to guide real movement across hundreds of miles of American territory. The discovery would soon lead Walsh into an investigation that would uncover one of the most significant finds in Underground Railroad research and change historians' understanding of post-Civil War resistance movements. Walsh immediately contacted Dr. Marcus Thompson, a historian at Virginia Commonwealth University, who specialized in post-Civil War African American history and Underground Railroad research. When Thompson arrived at the Hartwell Mansion the following day, he brought specialized equipment for analyzing historical documents and photographs. Thompson's initial examination of the portrait confirmed Walsh's observations while revealing additional significant details. The mysterious map displayed characteristics consistent with clandestine documents used by resistance networks during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The careful positioning of symbols, the use of natural landmarks for navigation, and the discrete marking system all suggested a sophisticated communication tool. This appears to be what we call a freedom map, Thompson explained as he studied high-resolution images of the portrait. These documents were used by networks that continued operating after the official end of slavery, helping people escape debt peonage, convict leasing, and other forms of post-Reconstruction oppression. Thompson's expertise revealed that the formal end of slavery in 1865 had not eliminated the need for escape routes and safe houses. Throughout the South, systems of sharecropping, convict leasing, and debt peonage had created conditions that many historians now recognize as slavery by other names. Networks similar to the Underground Railroad had continued operating well into the 20th century, helping people escape these oppressive systems. The map in the Hartwell portrait showed routes that corresponded to documented escape paths used during this later period. The symbols marking safe houses and meeting points aligned with locations that oral history and scattered documentary evidence had suggested were part of continued resistance networks. Most significantly, the map's presence in a wealthy white family's formal portrait suggested something unprecedented in Underground Railroad research. Documentary evidence of white Southern families actively participating in post-Civil War resistance networks. Such participation had been long suspected by historians, but never conclusively proven. Thompson contacted colleagues at Howard University, the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, and other institutions specializing in resistance movement research. The discovery had the potential to significantly expand understanding of how these networks operated and who participated in them during the decades following Reconstruction. The investigation was expanding from a routine estate appraisal into a potentially groundbreaking historical discovery that could reshape scholarly understanding of American resistance movements. Thompson's research led him to examine Richmond city records, church archives, and genealogical databases to trace the Hartwell family history. What he discovered painted a complex picture of a family whose public reputation differed dramatically from their private activities. According to public records, Thomas Hartwell, the patriarch shown in the 1901 portrait, had been a successful tobacco merchant who rebuilt his fortune during the post-war economic recovery. His business dealings appeared conventional, purchasing tobacco from small farmers throughout Virginia and selling it to northern markets through established commercial channels. However, Thompson's deeper investigation revealed intriguing inconsistencies in the family's documented activities. Thomas Hartwell's business records showed frequent unexplained trips throughout Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania, often lasting several weeks and involving routes that seemed inefficient for normal commercial purposes. Church records provided additional clues. The Hartwell family attended St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Richmond, where they were recorded as substantial contributors to various charitable activities. Most significantly, they had donated regularly to organizations providing assistance to displaced persons and travelers in need, terminology that Thompson recognized as coded language often used to describe assistance to people escaping oppressive labor conditions. Thompson discovered correspondence between Thomas Hartwell and ministers throughout the region, discussing business matters in language that seemed deliberately vague. These letters referenced special arrangements for travelers, safe accommodations, and reliable transportation in ways that suggested activities beyond normal commercial exchanges. The family's financial records revealed additional anomalies. Regular expenditures were recorded for food, clothing, and supplies that far exceeded what would be needed for a household of 7 people. These surplus purchases corresponded chronologically with Thomas Hartwell's unexplained trips, suggesting systematic provision of assistance to people beyond the immediate family. Most revealing were property records showing that the Hartwell family owned several small farms and buildings throughout rural Virginia, properties that generated little documented income but required regular maintenance and staffing. These locations corresponded to some of the symbols marked on the mysterious map in the family portrait. The evidence suggested that Thomas Hartwell had used his legitimate tobacco business as cover for operating an extensive network of safe houses and transportation routes, continuing Underground Railroad activities well into the 20th century. As Thompson's investigation expanded, he began contacting historians and genealogists in other states to trace connections between the locations marked on the Hartwell map and documented Underground Railroad sites. What emerged was evidence of a sophisticated resistance network that had operated across multiple states for decades after the Civil War. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a historian at the University of Pennsylvania, confirmed that several locations marked on the Hartwell map corresponded to documented safe houses that had remained active into the early 1900s. These sites had provided assistance to people escaping convict leasing systems, debt peonage arrangements, and other forms of coercive labor that had replaced slavery throughout the South. The network revealed in the Hartwell portrait appeared to have connected dozens of safe houses, reliable guides, and sympathetic families across hundreds of miles. The careful documentation suggested years of operational experience and coordination between participants who maintained contact despite geographic separation and potential legal consequences. Thompson discovered that the mysterious symbols on the map represented a sophisticated communication system. Different symbols indicated various types of assistance available at each location: food and shelter, medical care, transportation, false identification documents, and connections to employment opportunities in northern cities. The routes marked on the map followed established transportation corridors, but avoided areas where escapees might encounter law enforcement or hostile populations. The network appeared to have detailed intelligence about safe passage times, friendly contacts, and potential dangers along each route. Most remarkably, Thompson found evidence that the network had operated with remarkable effectiveness. Oral history interviews with elderly African Americans throughout the region revealed consistent stories about friendly white families who had provided assistance to people fleeing oppressive labor conditions well into the 20th century. The Hartwell portrait provided the first concrete documentary evidence of this network's existence and scope. The map represented a master plan showing the complete system that historians had previously known, only through fragmentary evidence and second-hand accounts. The discovery suggested that Underground Railroad activities had continued for decades, longer than previously documented, operated by networks that included both black and white participants, and had successfully helped thousands of people escape post-Reconstruction oppression. Thompson's research led him to locate surviving Hartwell descendants, including Thomas Hartwell's great-granddaughter, Eleanor Hartwell Brennan, who lived in Alexandria, Virginia. When Thompson contacted Brennan and described the mysterious map in the family portrait, her response revealed that the family had maintained knowledge of their ancestors' activities for over a century. "We always knew great-grandfather had been involved in helping people," Brennan explained during their initial meeting. But the family never talked about details because they said it could still be dangerous for the people who had been helped, or their descendants. Brennan possessed an extensive collection of family documents that had been carefully preserved through 4 generations. Among these materials were coded letters, detailed expense records, and personal journals that confirmed and expanded the story told by the map in the portrait. Thomas Hartwell's private journal, written between 1898 and 1905, documented his network's activities in remarkable detail. The journal described successful operations helping people escape convict leasing systems in Georgia, debt peonage arrangements in Alabama, and coercive labor contracts throughout the Carolinas. The journal revealed that Hartwell's network had worked closely with African American leaders and organizations, including connections to early civil rights activists and religious leaders who were organizing resistance to post-Reconstruction oppression. The network represented an early example of interracial cooperation in fighting systematic injustice. Most significantly, Brennan possessed letters from people who had been helped by the Hartwell network. These letters, written years after successful escapes, thanked the family for assistance that had allowed the writers to find freedom, education, and opportunity in northern cities. The letters provided personal testimonies to the network's effectiveness and humanitarian impact. The family documents revealed that Thomas Hartwell had been motivated by religious conviction and moral outrage at the systematic oppression that had replaced slavery. His private writings expressed deep anger at legal systems that allowed continued exploitation and determination to provide practical assistance to people seeking freedom. The collection also included detailed maps, coded communications, and operational procedures that showed how the network had maintained security while coordinating complex operations across multiple states. The documents revealed sophisticated planning that had allowed the network to operate successfully for over 20 years. Dr. Thompson assembled a research team including historians from multiple universities to verify the authenticity and significance of the Hartwell discovery. The team's investigation confirmed that the documents and portrait provided genuine evidence of one of the most extensive post-Civil War resistance networks ever documented. Newspaper archives from the period contained several references to unexplained disappearances of people from coercive labor situations throughout the South. These reports, often describing people who had violated their contracts or abandoned their obligations, corresponded chronologically and geographically with activities documented in the Hartwell materials. Court records revealed numerous cases where Southern employers had pursued legal action against workers who had fled debt peonage and convict leasing arrangements. The locations where these legal disputes occurred matched routes and safe houses shown on the Hartwell map, providing independent confirmation of the network's operational areas. The research team also discovered federal government documents from the early 1900s expressing concern about organized assistance to contract violators and networks facilitating unlawful departure from employment obligations. These documents demonstrated that federal authorities had been aware of continued Underground Railroad-type activities, but had been unable to identify or prosecute the participants. Most significantly, the team found evidence that the Hartwell network had been part of a broader movement that included similar operations throughout the South. The network represented one component of organized resistance to post-Reconstruction oppression that had involved hundreds of participants and had successfully helped thousands of people escape exploitative conditions. The historical verification confirmed that systems of oppression had continued long after the official end of slavery, and that organized resistance networks had continued operating to help people find freedom. The Hartwell discovery provided the most complete documentation of these activities ever found. The research also revealed that many prominent Southern families had secretly supported resistance activities while maintaining public reputations as conventional business people. The pattern suggested that opposition to post-Reconstruction oppression had been more widespread among white Southerners than previously documented. The verification process confirmed that the Hartwell portrait and associated documents represented a discovery of national historical significance that would require revision of scholarly understanding of post-Civil War resistance movements. As news of the Hartwell discovery spread through academic circles, historians at other institutions began re-examining their own collections for similar evidence of continued Underground Railroad activities. The results revealed that the Hartwell network had been part of a much larger system of organized resistance. Dr. James Washington at Morehouse College discovered documents showing that prominent African American churches throughout the South had maintained travelers' aid programs well into the 20th century. These programs, officially described as charitable assistance, had actually provided systematic support to people escaping coercive labor arrangements. Similar discoveries at universities throughout the region revealed that the post-Civil War resistance movement had included participants from all social levels: wealthy families like the Hartwells, middle-class professionals, working-class families, and religious organizations both black and white. The research revealed that the movement had operated with remarkable sophistication, using established business networks, religious organizations, and family connections to coordinate activities across hundreds of miles. Participants had developed secure communication systems, standardized procedures for assisting escapees, and effective methods for avoiding detection by authorities. Most significantly, the expanded research showed that the movement had achieved substantial success. Thousands of people had successfully escaped post-Reconstruction oppression and had found freedom, education, and economic opportunity in northern and western cities. Many had gone on to become community leaders, educators, and activists in the early civil rights movement. The movement had also influenced the development of early civil rights organizations. Many leaders of groups like the NAACP and the Urban League had been directly or indirectly connected to families and communities that had participated in continued Underground Railroad activities. The broader investigation revealed that the Hartwell portrait documented not an isolated case, but rather one visible example of a massive, coordinated resistance movement that had operated throughout the South for decades after the Civil War. The discovery represented one of the most significant finds in American civil rights history. The research demonstrated that organized resistance to systematic oppression had never ceased after the Civil War, but had continued through networks that had evolved and adapted to changing conditions while maintaining their fundamental commitment to helping people achieve freedom. The formal presentation of the Hartwell discovery to the academic community generated intense interest and some unexpected controversy. While most historians recognized the significance of the find, some questioned the implications for understanding post-Civil War Southern society and the extent of white participation in resistance activities. The Smithsonian Institution immediately expressed interest in acquiring the portrait and related documents for permanent preservation and display. However, the discovery also attracted attention from groups who questioned whether the evidence should be made public, arguing that it might compromise descendants of people who had been helped by the network. Dr. Thompson worked with African American community leaders and civil rights organizations to address these concerns. The consensus that emerged supported full disclosure of the historical evidence while taking steps to protect privacy where contemporary descendants might be affected. The portrait and documents were authenticated through extensive technical analysis, including carbon dating, photographic analysis, and handwriting verification. All tests confirmed the material's authenticity and historical accuracy. Major museums and educational institutions competed to host exhibitions featuring the Hartwell discovery. The National Underground Railroad Freedom Center in Cincinnati organized the first major display, titled "The Network That Never Stopped: Post-Civil War Resistance Movements." The exhibition attracted national media attention and generated new public interest in post-Reconstruction history. Visitors were particularly moved by personal letters from people who had been helped by the network, which provided human faces and individual stories behind the historical documentation. The discovery also prompted new research funding for investigating post-Civil War resistance movements. Several universities established research programs specifically focused on documenting continued Underground Railroad activities and their impact on early civil rights organizing. However, the revelation also generated criticism from some quarters. Certain historians argued that emphasizing continued resistance movements might minimize the effectiveness of legal and political strategies pursued by mainstream civil rights organizations during the same period. The controversy ultimately enriched scholarly discussion about the complexity of post-Civil War resistance and the multiple strategies that people had used to fight systematic oppression during the decades following Reconstruction. 2 years after Jennifer Walsh first noticed the mysterious map in the Hartwell family portrait, the discovery has transformed understanding of American resistance movements and post-Civil War history. The portrait now hangs in the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, where it serves as the centerpiece of a permanent exhibition documenting continued resistance activities. The exhibition, Hidden Networks: The Underground Railroad After Emancipation, attracts hundreds of thousands of visitors annually who come to learn about the decades-long struggle against post-Reconstruction oppression. Interactive displays allow visitors to trace routes on the Hartwell map and read personal testimonies from people who were helped by the network. Eleanor Hartwell Brennan donated the complete collection of family documents to a consortium of historically Black colleges and universities, where they have become the foundation for ongoing research into post-Civil War resistance movements. Graduate students continue to discover new evidence of network activities and their connections to early civil rights organizing. The discovery has inspired similar investigations of other family archives and historical collections throughout the South. Researchers have identified dozens of additional families who participated in continued Underground Railroad activities, revealing a movement that was far more extensive than previously documented. for descendants of people who were helped by these networks. The revelation has provided new understanding of their family histories and the courage of ancestors who had risked everything to achieve freedom. Many families have come forward with their own stories and documents, contributing to a growing body of evidence about post-Reconstruction resistance. The portrait has become a symbol of hidden courage and the power of ordinary people to resist injustice through organized action. It demonstrates how a single family's decision to preserve historical evidence can illuminate forgotten chapters of American history and honor the memory of people whose sacrifices had been largely unknown. The story reminds us that resistance to oppression often operates in ways that remain invisible to official records, preserved only in family memories and carefully hidden documents. The calm 1901 portrait of the Hartwell family, with its subtle map on the wall, represents thousands of similar acts of courage that shaped American history, but were never publicly acknowledged. As visitors study the portrait today, they see not just a prosperous Southern family posing for a formal photograph, but a document of moral courage and organized resistance that continued the Underground Railroad's mission long after most Americans believed it had ended. The hidden detail on the wall serves as a testament to the enduring human commitment to freedom and the power of ordinary people to change history through extraordinary acts of courage and compassion.